Hi, everyone. This is a Zoom or a chat that I have been trying to do for ages, and it's been my fault that I kind of had to push the dates and so forth. But I'm thrilled today. I'm joined with Victoria Jones from Bonnybrook Pharmacy in Coolock. Victoria, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, no problem.
We're going to chat today about HRT, and we will talk about menopause and other aspects as well, and some supplements. But I guess many times I'm asked loads of questions about different forms of HRT, you know, what people can take in HRT, etc. So I said I wanted to get a pharmacist on to chat to me about it and talk through the different forms, etc. And Victoria and I connected probably maybe a year or so back, I think, over Instagram. So I'm thrilled that you could come on and share your knowledge with me. So I guess, Victoria, just to get stuck into it, do you want to maybe just introduce yourself in terms of your own journey and where you're at in menopause as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. So I suppose I'm a 41-year-old pharmacist, owner of Bonnybrook Pharmacy in Coolock, and I'm also a perimenopausal woman. So I'm in the thick of it, which is fantastic. I'm on HRT myself, and it's been a long enough journey. I'm starting to feel myself again, which is wonderful. I qualified as a pharmacist 15 years ago from RCSI, and I've worked in different pharmacy areas, worked in corporate areas, and always really missed being patient facing when I was in the offices and I wasn't seeing patients. So 3 years ago, just nearly 3 years ago, we opened Bonnybrook Pharmacy as my own little independent pharmacy, just me and my team. And we wanted to focus on women's health. I think there's a big gap of knowledge there. I think pharmacists are fantastic as a profession. It's such a wide knowledge base, and same with the doctors. We work very closely with doctors. But I feel that in the whole world, in Ireland as well, that there had been kind of that big gap in knowledge for evidence-based knowledge for females around menopause. We were all going through it, but yet we don't really talk about it. There's no signage about it. There's some, there's not always the correct information online. So even for myself as a pharmacist going through it, I nearly was like, oh, I'm perimenopausal. And I felt like, you kind of lose yourself. So I'll talk about that in a moment, but so that was one of the reasons why we focus on, and my specialty is female health and menopause in Bonnybrook Pharmacy. So women can come in and have a chat. We go through other HRT with them, really explain how to use it and just give them the couple of minutes, because especially when you're suffering with brain fog and anxiety, the moments you have in your doctor's surgery, while they're full of information, it's actually quite hard to absorb it, especially if you're a little anxious about it. And you're saying, right, menopause and perimenopause, and I'm 41 or 55, so it's quite overwhelming. So it's important to go to someone who has a good knowledge base on menopause and perimenopause, then for your prescriptions, and get that little bit of hand holding and a little bit of education as well, and not just be told, here's a bag and now go away, you'd be grand.
Yeah.
Now some women are, but I need a little bit more hand holding.
Yeah, no, and I think the majority of us do. I definitely think so. Just in relation to you're in perimenopause now, so you're quite early, right?
Yeah, quite early. So I suppose that's my interest in female health is really a couple of pronged approach. I come from a family of girls, so I have 2 sisters, so 4 women in the house, and we have early menopause in our family. So it would have been in all of the branches of my mum's side of the family, and then my sister went through early menopause just after having a baby at 41, and she really her personality changed after having the baby, and we thought, well, sure, she's only 40, she couldn't possibly be going, and then she had a lovely doctor, fantastic doctor, who, when she had 41, said, no, you're actually postmenopausal. And she said, what? And her estrogen did take them, were through the floor, and she straight away put her on HRT. So there wasn't a huge, it was only about 2 years that she was kind of like, just didn't feel herself. Baby, and she thought, it's just, she's 4 children. Anyway, started on the HRT and was just she just suddenly, within a couple of months, she was like, I feel myself again. And like, we could all know, and her husband noticed it, her children noticed it. And so I think when I physically and visually saw the changes in someone so close to me, that just sparked my knowledge even more. And then now, and I suppose I had quite a high power job running a chain of pharmacies. And because I wasn't patient facing, I loved it. And it was very, like yourself, you from the corporate world also. And then when I opened Bonnybrook, I had started having massive anxiety attacks and just wasn't feeling myself and feeling very overwhelmed, but nothing in particular was setting me off. It was small day-to-day things, and it wasn't really me. So overwhelming anxiety and the brain fog and the not sleeping and then waking up just quite warm, but I didn't realize that was, hot flushes, but very rare, weren't that strong at all. And so I'd been doing a lot of research on menopause, and we do pharmacists do extra, it's called continuing professional development. So my area that I always specialize in and I'm really interested in is menopause and perimenopause. So the more I was learning, the more I was reading, and the more education I was getting, I was realizing these symptoms were actually mine. So it was kind of a wake up moment. So I went to my female health specialist GP, Dr. Sarah Callahan. I think you've had her on, she's fantastic. We started on HRT, and since then, that was 6 months ago, and I'm thrilled to say I feel so much better, and it just back to myself. I just didn't feel myself. It was just that's the overwhelming. So every day in the pharmacy, I suppose the patients that come through the door are normally women over the age of 35, so between the age of 35 and kind of 95, and I'm hearing it all the time. I'm hearing, I don't feel myself. I don't feel myself. And I had gone to the doctor about a year ago, a different GP, and I just said, look, about a week or two before my period, like I'm crashing. I said, I just feel like I'm crashing. And she said, okay, yeah. And I said, look, there is early menopause in my family. She said, oh, no, you're too young. I said, okay. And she prescribed some antidepressants. And I said, I don't really think they're going to help. I'm not depressed. I said, it's really only my period. And I said, that's my estrogen levels dropping. And she was a very young female doctor. She was lovely. And she said, no, they'll help. And I was like, oh, okay. And even as a pharmacist, you don't want, I was just like, oh, I knew it wasn't right. So I said, okay, I think I'll just leave it for the moment. And then a year went by, my symptoms just got so much worse. And then I saw Dr. Sarah Callahan. So it's been fantastic just to start to feeling myself again. But that's the overriding thing that I'm seeing in women coming through my door, is that the symptoms are so different for every woman, as you talk about it. And they're saying the same thing to me, which is, I don't feel myself. I've never suffered with anxiety before. And as you and I both know, the hot flushes are nearly one of the last symptoms to come. And so when I say to them, the menopause or perimenopause, early menopause in your family, they're like, oh no, sure, I'm 45, I'm too young, I'm not having any hot. I remember my mom having to open windows in the middle of the night, or like, that's not me. And I'm like, and then you're trying to give them education resources to go and research themselves. And I think, and I know you're a huge advocate of just getting the information out there for women.
Informed choice.
Exactly, informed choice. And I know you spend so much time, like myself, just trying to get the right information out there, and given the choice. HRT is not for everyone, but let them have the choice and the correct information. I just think it's just amazing.
No, it is. And I think, I think that's where even that awareness around, like, say, you were lucky in a way that your sister went into menopause early, because it kind of you had that red flag, but there's so many others that just wouldn't have that red flag. And, whilst we know the average age is 45, like I'm talking to women every week who are starting to show the symptoms well before 45. I mean, I started at 44 myself. So I'm still in perimenopause, and I'm 51. But look, it's when you have the tools and the knowledge that you can kind of do your own personal toolkit. That's the key to the whole, in my book, You know, that's
It
one of
is.
the biggest things with menopause is informed choice. But so let's just talk about the different forms of HRT. And I know you have some of the products there you can show us, which would be fantastic, because I think I'm a huge visual person. I love to see pictures or objects or whatever. It resonates with me, you know, so much quicker than sometimes a text, but or reading text. So when we talk about HRT, you know, what we're really talking about is the oral and transdermal forms of HRT. So do you want to talk us through that and kind of, you know, maybe how and, you know, where they come into play?
Yeah, absolutely. So HRT is just hormone replacement therapy. And so as we get older, going through perimenopause and menopause, our estrogen levels are fluctuating all of the time. So they're going up and down, and they often start to crash a little bit before your period is due. So hence why I was feeling for a week or two before my period absolutely horrendous. And if they probably check my levels, my blood levels, then they may be quite low. But one thing that I really want to take just to get across is that if your doctor says we have to do bloods, and if they come back and say, no, you're not a menopause, that's not accurate. You know, they don't even check bloods over after 45. It's to do with symptoms. Yeah, like that's a massive red flag. I can see that all the time. And they're like, oh, I have my bloods done, I'm perfect. Well, what
the bloods are just to rule out, in my book, it's always any other underlying condition like thyroid, anemic, low vitamin D, low B12, all that kind of stuff.
I think when the people hear I'm getting my bloods done, they assume that, you know, and the doctor said your bloods were fine, but what did they check? It meant that your thyroid was fine, your diabetes was fine, your B12 was fine, all of those things were checked. But they can't check your hormones because it fluctuates so often that depending on where you get the snapshot, it's a very different story. So either way, the HRT then is hormone replacement therapy, and the massive hormone that you need and that does this decline over time is estrogen. If you still have your womb, you will also need progesterone. So they're the two most commonly prescribed HRT molecules that you need to replenish into your body. So they come in different forms. It's not rocket science. The ones that are prescribed mostly now are the body identical estrogens. So that forms of gels or patches. So there's different brands. These are just two that I'm showing here. There's plenty of brands. There is sachets.
Do you have to spray as well, or does it?
Fantastic. Easy to use. I love the Lenzetto, actually. It's really, really easy to use. So these three, and there's tons on the market, are body identical estrogens that are transdermal, which just means that they're absorbed through the skin. They're just absorbed through the skin. So with that absorption, there is no risk of clotting or anything like that. And because it's body identical estrogen, you're replacing your own estrogen that you're losing. So
and I think there's been a lot of debate about body identical, and like in a lot of ways that term causes it really complicates people. Bioidentical, body identical. And I think that's just something, it's very much, there is a marketing element there in terms of those terms, and very much also it's a real kind of West Coast American term as well, in terms of the individualized, where you go into specialist compounding pharmacies, particularly in the US or North America, and they'll make up a solution based on your blood levels or what you're looking at. But the issue with that is that it's not FDA regulated. And I think that there's real confusion with body and bio. And I think, you know, so I'm just stating that because I'm asked the whole time. So the body identical, yes, it is partly a marketing term, but it does apply to the transdermals that you're just showing.
No, I don't think in Ireland anyone does, and it's not licensed if they do. No, this is all licensed and prescribed and safe. Finding pharmacies and that, I won't even go into that. I don't think they're even great.
There isn't. No, there's none in Ireland. No, but there is in the UK and in the US as well. But So do you find, actually, just in relation to applying those, so the patch is pretty straightforward, but just about the gel, because that's another one that you know, this whole, again, last summer, there was a lot of controversy in terms of how you apply it. And I found that, and I don't know if you're finding this, a lot of women were really rubbing it in, really, really tight, really firm, and nearly too much, and found then that it just wasn't working properly.
It's a funny one. So basically, I use this one here. It's the Estrogen pump, and I find it really, really easy to use. And at the start, you just take out the first pump and discard it, and then you're going to use it. So I'm on 3 pumps a day. So I use 2 in the morning and 1 in the evening, and I pump it into my hand. And if you imagine an A4 sheet of paper on your arm, at the upper part of your arm, just around your arm, you imagine that area, and you basically, I just wipe, and then that's it. And it's not, and it's alcohol based, so it just evaporates and then goes into your skin transdermally, and it's within 3 to 4 minutes it's completely dry to touch, and then you can get dressed, and you don't moisturize that area underneath or just straight after. And then I the arm, or you can do it on your thigh. So I suppose there's not a huge amount of rubbing because it's not a cream, it's a gel. Apply it and it absorbs, and it leaves it. I hate anything that leaves like a tacky residue. It doesn't. So it's, no one could notice that you have it on. And so that's a really good one. And the Lenzetto as well is a superb one. This one has a little pump, and you basically press it onto your forearm. So it has a little, so it's here. So it has a little, like a little trumpet at the start, and you basically place it on your arm here, and you press down, and then you take it away, and then you put the second one on if you're on 2 pumps. So that's a lovely one. And again, it just takes a few minutes for it to be absorbed, and then there's no tacky residue, but you just leave your sleeve up like that for a couple of minutes, and then it's absorbed. So like super easy.
Have you had feedback in relation to the spray that that if maybe you've had the gel or the patch, and for maybe we'll talk about HRT shortages in a few minutes, but maybe for whatever reason you've had to move to the spray? You know, I've definitely heard from quite a few women that they've had issues because it just hasn't possibly just hasn't worked as well for them as maybe the gel or the patch has. Have you come across that at all?
Anecdotally, I suppose the patch, the pump, the Lenzetto pump is much newer on the market. So I haven't had a huge amount of feedback yet. I think when you start on something and you know that it works, people are very slow to want to change. The whole thing about formulations of the Estrogen and everything else, and and I know the Balins are looking into it. I had started with that newer pack, and I've never found any issues with it. I think nearly at the very end it might feel a little more watery. I don't know if that's just me thinking it, but either way my team okay. But the Lenzetto, I have heard, but I also think at the very start, when people are trying to get their levels correct, it is quite hard, and your levels are going down. But once you find the right thing, I think the Lenzetto applied properly is quite important, and that you actually leave it on your arm for a couple of seconds. So that's quite important. I think some people just do this, and I saw one of the training videos, and that she straight away took it off after she'd pressed down. And you need to leave it for a couple of seconds and then take off, and then press and have a good seal. So if you've got very small, that's a very big trunk, and I think you might not be getting a perfectly kind of airtight seal. And I think some of the products will be escaping. So that's something. I've got nice fleshy arms, so I've got plenty of room.
And can you put that one on the thigh as well, or just
normally and the arms and those.
Okay. And then so that's the gel, the patch, and the spray. Just sorry. Show a patch, because do you know what? I don't have any, because I don't use a standard. I don't use HRT. Right now, that might change at some point. But so I know, look, I'm always trying to show people, look at the size of it, because people think, oh, it's a big patch.
Some of them change. So these are 2 different basically brands. This is so there's a really small one, which is a tiny patch. Can you see how small that is?
Yes.
So that's a 35. They're absolutely tiny. So they'd be all around all around the midline of the area you can apply. So the tummy, the top of the buttocks, anywhere like that you apply it. You just don't apply it on the breast area. And some of them are tiny. So some of them go up to about 4 times that size, but they're absolutely tiny. Yeah. Clear, so that's just a coating on it, and when you take it off it's completely clear, so really easy to change and really discreet, and you change twice a week, so they're fantastic. And they absorb through the skin so that you're getting that transdermal effect, and it's a lovely level effect that women love, and you don't have to worry about putting gels on in the morning. So but my sister uses these and she finds them fantastic.
And I think, again, a lot of the feedback I would get is the preferences for the bum, because you can't see it, and you forget about it, well, until you know you need to change it. And also that it's easier, that sometimes the tummy can be a little bit more sensitive to remove the patch. But I think that just depends, really, doesn't it?
It does. And to apply it to just slightly different areas, don't always use the one area.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
It takes time. Yeah. And it's funny, what we assume that people will know isn't necessarily, so detail. I suppose that's why in my pharmacy we try and give people a lot of detail, even just give them 5 or 10 minutes of our time for the first, and kind of holding their hand and giving them the right explanation, because there's no way their doctor had time to go through all that with them, which is understandable. And then there's a couple of other products I have here. So you have, if you still have your womb and you're on estrogen, you'll be prescribed the Micronized Progesterone, which is the other hormone that you need just to protect the lining of your womb. So depending if you're period free for over a year, you'll probably be prescribed something like the Estrogen 100. That's every single night you take that, and that can be taken orally or vaginally, but it's normally at night time because some women do find it causes drowsiness. Or it can be given between 12 to kind of 15 days of the month in a higher dose if you still have a bleed. So, and again, they're absolutely tiny.
Just on that, Victoria, why would you opt to use it vaginally as opposed to orally?
Some women, so progesterone can sometimes increase PMT kind of symptoms, so breast tenderness, and they can feel a bit low. I felt after my first month or so on taking the Estrogen, because I still have a bleed, I take it cyclically, so I take it for 12 days of a month in the evening time, and I did find the first couple of months women will notice that they have quite, maybe their breast is slightly swollen, and can be quite sore, and they might sometimes get a little bit of a headache depending. It's just like starting a new pill, and I would my young girls or women on it. It just takes time. If you're adding anything new into your body, especially hormones, you need to give it minimum of 12 weeks to settle down, because it's all. So I would say, don't just start in 2 weeks' time. You go, oh my God, I had to stop. My boobs were killing me. So I do warn people. I say, look, you may get a little bit of PMT symptoms. Just let it all settle down. Let your body get used to it again. So you do speak to your doctor about it. They do prefer, most of the doctors prefer to give it orally. It can help sleep, which is a huge factor for women. It's the calming kind of hormone. And it is really important because it does protect the lining of your uterus. And so, but you can use it vaginally. A lot of women don't like to use it vaginally, depending find that it dissolve well, or you might need to use a panty liner in the evening time. And then obviously if there's any intercourse or anything like that, that's a minefield. And also because there's so many estrogen receptors in our whole body. So, obviously in our vaginal area, there's a lot of estrogen receptors. So a lot of people, symptoms would come from that at the start, and they might sore, or they might just, there might be a little vaginal dryness, or maybe, sexual intercourse is a little bit not as comfortable as it used to be. And that's a whole realm, of your estrogen receptors, because they're all over your body. They're in your brain, your heart, your muscles, your bones, especially localized in your vagina. So Invagus is one of the local estrogens that you can use in addition to or on its own. So it's a HRT, but you use it vaginally. So these are vaginal, they look like little bullets actually. That. And you open them up and then you pop them in at nighttime. And that's basically giving back the estrogen to that area. Now it looks quite big, but it's much, much smaller than a tampon. And that's started at night time. Normally there's a loading dose. So they normally use it for one a night for either 2 weeks or a month. And then they go down to kind of using it 2 or 3 times a week. And that's giving back that estrogen to that whole area, and helps atrophy, vaginal pain. And that's something to discuss with your doctor. But that's all. Don't like to take the utrogesterone vaginally as well, because they're sometimes using beads or vaginally as well. But these are great, fantastic.
I know Dr. Lundy is I would say she likes Imvages as for kind of for the local dryness and so forth. Okay, so and when we talk about transdermal, so transdermal versus oral then, and I know we had the oral progesterone there. So really, we know under the guidance from the British Menopause Society and the European Society that, you know, really that protocol that you've just shown, a transdermal estrogen plus a micronized progesterone, is kind of the nice way to go if that's kind of, you know, depending on a woman's symptoms and so forth. And then the local estrogen if you have the vaginal issues.
Yeah, exactly. And so the older style estrogens, which have a slightly higher risk of clots and factors, would be more where estrogen was taken orally. So there would be Premarin and things like that. So that when we say that, even though we don't necessarily like the term of body identical estrogen, the reason I use that terminology is because Premarin is from horse urine. So that's not the same female human body identical estrogen, and there has a slightly increased risk of clots. So they do prefer, would be always on transdermal, because it's not, you know, it's not absorbed through the mouth, and it doesn't go through your liver, so it's much easier for absorption. Now some women still prefer and are still on Premarin or lots of different other types of oral estrogens, but it's something to have a discussion with your GP about.
Are you seeing, do you see more, is it more transdermal oral, or it's more transdermal? Yeah.
Those the older style doctors who just are used to prescribing the orals. I'm now maybe reaching out, we're having a discussion, it's fantastic because GPs
that is great.
And they've such a huge knowledge base, and I suppose they're inundated, and I suppose the last 2 years has been tough on everyone, pharmacists, GPs, the whole everyone. And I suppose, you know, if someone has been prescribing HRT for years and then, you know, maybe just isn't au fait with the latest guidelines, and then we have lovely doctors in Coolock and around the area, in Portmarnock, Malahide, and they're very open to having discussions, you know, which is super, because it's to do with, you know, integrated approach. We look at the women's whole, includes lots of medical providers, whether that's maybe it's a female physio for, you know, some urinary issues, the doctor, the pharmacist. So that integrated approach I think is really important. Or maybe some CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, some talk therapy. So I think it's, you know, the doctors are great, but we are definitely seeing by miles a much higher amount of transdermals.
Good. Okay. And then just, and I know we're going to talk about, you know, when HRT isn't for you, what else you can do, or maybe that you're just at a stage where you don't need it. And I'll explain where I'm coming from on that. But can we just briefly just talk about the costs for a minute? And the reason I want to talk about that is because I've had conversations, I've looked into this, and I think it's just for people to understand that we're just not in the same position in Ireland as other countries when it comes to the baseline costs. Would you mind just kind of giving your views on that?
Yeah, of course. So I suppose, okay, for example, in Ireland, Irish pharmacies, we have to buy from bona fide suppliers. So suppliers that our regulators have said are safe and proper, and there's proper channels for safety. So we only buy from bona fide suppliers. And there is drug prices that are set by governments and also drug companies. So in Ireland, I buy this in, just say, for €10. I could buy this if I had a pharmacy in the UK for maybe €7 or €5. I cannot, as an Irish pharmacist with an Irish pharmacy business, avail of the prices that are set in the UK Spain, Israel, America. We cannot access that market because they're not bona fide suppliers for Ireland. We have a certain supplier list and that's it. So I suppose there is a huge discussion on, I suppose there's taxes and tariffs and loads. It's very, very complicated how to get to the end price point. So while every Irish pharmacy will buy it in at near enough the same price, that's not the same for Northern Ireland or the UK. So I suppose
they're buying it in at a much lower base price, much lower. Yeah.
Much that we can't access. We're not able to access.
And less taxes.
And less taxes. Yeah. I know, but the cost of living and wages and everything else, like, I mean, and rental, like, I mean, it's a huge, big, you know, industry. One thing I will say is, I suppose it's important to value your health. I suppose, even though, you know, I don't always buy cheapest. If that was the case, we'd all eat McDonald's every day and buy €1 saver meals. You know, you know, while these two products are identical, it is also about getting the, you know, evaluating your health and getting that right information. So when women come,
100%.
And they need to be able to, you know, I show them using badges, and I explain to them how to use their patches. That I show them videos on their Lenzetto. You know, I explain to them that this is the evening time. You know, the amount of, I had 3 people in yesterday who had showed me prescriptions that they gotten elsewhere, and they were told different directions that weren't exactly correct. And then I had my free time, even though they'd got them somewhere else, to explain to them, oh, actually, well, just a little misunderstanding. You know, I think you're meant to take it this way and this way. And they were like, oh, I wasn't told that. And I said I was just, you know, and I understand that it's very busy in pharmacy, and, you know, but we do try our best. And if the person doesn't feel they got all the information, by all means, give me a call. You know, Instagram, because we'll come back to you, you know, when we get time. And like
I think the role, and I'm always talking about this, you know, when I do talks and stuff, the role of the pharmacist is a key role. And to me, I think in a lot of cases where, you know, I think many people don't maybe get as much as they could out of their local pharmacist. And I think that's where, you know, there's a huge, like my pharmacist, I live in Rathfarnham, I go to my pharmacist in Ballyroan. I've been with him for years. It's just fantastic, like for anything that for the kids or whatever. It's just brilliant. And I completely trust him. He spends the time with me. We go through things, and that is really so worthwhile. So I'll drive out of my way to go to that pharmacist because I just know. Yeah, exactly. And I just think that particularly when it comes to menopause, there's 2 really key parts of your support team. One is the right GP and the other is the right pharmacist. So anyone who's living in Coolock is lucky.
No, I think you're so right, because, you know, as I said, it's not always, you have to value your health, and that's nearly the tagline. We're actually really price competitive on HRT because it's my passion, and I really think it should be available. And it's covered, most HRT are covered on medical cards, drug payment schemes and things like that, with the exception of in badges at the moment. But I'm getting onto the company. I've emailed them a few times to ask them why have they not applied for a license for general medicals.
Testosterone isn't covered either. Sure, it's not.
Testogen is, which is this one.
Oh, is that covered? Is that really?
Yeah.
That's covered on medical card and drug payment scheme.
Just Androfem is. So Androfem is a private prescription, and that's called an unlicensed product. So we have to buy that in from. So that changes. That can vary dramatically, and where I buy it from. So whichever pharmacy you go to, we always have this in stock, and it's quite reasonable in our pharmacy. So
that's not covered, but the Testogen is.
The Testogen is. Okay. Now this changes where the HSE fit. So while Vagifem for that local estrogen is covered, you know, but it's 1/3 of the strength of the badges, like, you know, so you get the same strength. But on your medical card, you would have to use 3. It's not terribly pleasant. It's 3 applicators, you know, whereas so I think in the future there's a lot of pressure. I know Dr. Lundy is putting pressure on them as well to get this covered. So there is, you know, black hole.
Okay, well, that's good. And another thing just to mention again, I know a lot of people know that I did meet with Fianna Fáil representatives recently, and I was talking about women's health and, you know, menopause, but also some other aspects as well. But one of the biggest areas we had a great conversation around was the cost. So I think we just have to keep, you know, keep putting pressure on the cost factor, because you know, if you've all these bits coming together with menopause, like maybe you're going to a pelvic physio, maybe you're going to your doctor, then if you are on HRT and you're getting all of it, it becomes quite an expensive time. So, you know, hopefully if we keep putting pressure on the cost, we may see something change on that down the line.
Absolutely. I suppose like Conti is a patch where it has the estrogen and progesterone together. So that's slightly more expensive. And Lenzetto is slightly more expensive. But as these things go down, you know, other generics might come into the market. But there is, you know, most, if you ask your pharmacist, we're very competitive in Bonnybrook Pharmacy. And I said that, I think it's so important. So we do a really minimum pricing structure. And we also have a lot of stock because it's in my best interest to stock it. Conciliant Health, who make, you know, Everil and Everil Conti. I think they must see my emails coming in and I'm like, why is it not back? Can you explain to me why it's not? So that the whole shortage is there, but we do secure, so we have quite high levels of stock because I need to keep patients, which is a really important. And that's another factor into costs. I have to buy this in. It might sit on my shelf for a month or two. So most pharmacies who aren't menopause pharmacies may only buy 1 or 2 packets in. Then it goes short for 2 months and they've got 20 women on it, but they don't have stock, buy that stock before they sell it. So their accountants are saying, well, you can't do that because it's sitting there for 2 months. There's a couple of €100 worth of stock. So, and of course, and there's a problem. So we do try and buy enough stock to make sure we facilitate all our patients and so that they don't run out.
Which is great. And
as far as we can.
So are you impacted by the shortages? Or are you keeping on top of it?
I literally kept on top of it, but we couldn't take any new patients last month for Everil Conti. Now that's changed, it's all back. But I explained to the women, we took their names and numbers and said, we will call you as soon as it comes back. And we were able to do that. And we deliver and everything else all over the country. So we had a lot of women, but I did explain that we do give preference to people who historically are patients of ours and I want to give them continuity. So that's another, if your pharmacist go out of the way to try and make sure that there's patches for you, you know, have we explained.
Fantastic.
You know, I spend hours on the phone and emails to companies, you know, and I suppose that's because that's my passion, but does your farm do that? You know, so there's a huge thing about it. And even that when I have to track down, trying to find the most reasonable supplier for us for this, the Androfem, because female testosterone that's licensed. So, you know, there's a whole spectrum there to do with costs. It's quite complicated.
It's not like you just rock up to a cash and carry and buy your not that straight, but I do understand that. So just to touch on in relation, so say HRT is contraindicated for you for medical reasons or so forth, or it's just not for you, or maybe say maybe you've loads of estrogen, but it's progesterone you need to work on or something or other. What do you recommend then in relation to other supports that people coming into you can possibly look at?
So for myself, for a couple of years before I started HRT, to stop that kind of hormonal imbalance I just felt, I found actually the Menamin, the Clean Marine Menamin, I always give this to people. It's a really good price point, and we usually do about 4 years off it, but it's really good for that hormonal balance. It's a mid-range product, but it's really good. It's got lots of key ingredients, and it has the soya isoflavonoids, which kind of help balance out, they're estrogenic, so help balance out that hormonal fluctuation. There's also your D3, so your very important vitamin D. I love vitamin D.
That's another chat.
I love them. Biotin for your hair, skin and nails, your omegas. That's a really good product, and it's a really good price point. So that's ones that we get a lot of resale on that. And my friends joke me, they'll text me and say, could I get a box of the crazy pills, because they find that they don't have I do love that.
It's a great, that's a brilliant, really, really brilliant one. I was working on a starter bundle for menopause, and that's one of the key parts of it. Because I just find, like, for years, like with hundreds of women, thousands probably at this stage, and particularly in the early perimenopause years, they've really just found that a game changer. And it's Irish too, which I like.
I love that. And product, and it's from krill, which is really good, a sustainable source as well. really important, because, you know, for women need something before when they're feeling those hormonal fluctuations, and some women might not, they might suffice. They might say, do you know what, I don't need HRT, perfect for me. And that just, it can change over time. So give yourself, you know, check in with yourself every and say, how am I feeling? Is it, you know, doing the job? I think I've seen a couple of advertising things for new things on the market, and they're quite expensive. One's a shake, and I just thought, and it's marketed as, you know, I think it's weight loss or something else as well. You know, there's so much, it's becoming big business now.
Yeah, so, well, I read an article in Forbes, I think it was a couple of weeks back, saying like it's $1 billion industry now, menopause. So I think like there is a part of, you got to keep grounded. You've got to keep, to me, it's very much got to keep, what do we know works? And you know, it's not like, look, say for example, and we won't, I'll just mention it, but if you get onto Google and you get onto progesterone creams, which are those bioidentical forms, not regulated, that's a massive market. And in a lot of cases, you know, the effectiveness is to be questioned, you know, so I think it's, And what other, sorry, Victoria, what other supplements would you recommend?
So I love this one. Obviously my vitamin D I love. Now it comes in no different forms at the moment. If anyone has any problems with swallowing, these are quite a nice one. Because they're, you see half my packet's gone.
Oh, they're really small. They're
really small, and they're 3,000 IUs. So especially for the winter when we're, you know, we're not getting any sunshine, that's a lovely one. And they're that's a Pharmanord brand, which is lovely. And then for kind of the hot flushes and things like that, sage is one of the only things that has, out of all the herbs, is very good with hot flushes. Good, comes in tablets and it comes in drops. That's also really good. It's in lots of formulations, but that's a really big one.
Flash. Have you come across Flash? That's another Irish product. That's very good for hot flushes. And even for kind of calming. I've gotten a lot of feedback on that one.
Brilliant. Well, I'll be buying that into the pharmacy later on.
Check it out. There's some great ingredients in it.
Oh, brilliant. And we were talking about the B12 just for the, you know, and there's lots of different B12 supplements. There's my spray, love, because they're easy to take into the mouth. That's easy for the whole family. And there's tablets as well, which are fantastic. And then magnesium. So the magnesium 365, and so easily absorbed. But if you sometimes, I find that women, if they're, it can be a barrier to them doing it. If it means boiling the kettle and everything else, like take it. But sometimes if you're kids to bed and everything else and you're flustered, I personally use Mag 365. It's beside my kettle. And then, but lazy and I've forgotten, these are beside my bedside, which is magnesium Pharmanord. I love these as well. And these are bioactive ones. They're easily absorbed in 3 types of magnesium. So but they're fantastic for helping tell the brain, those neurotransmitters, to switch off.
Calm down.
I think out of all the supplements, I think the Clean Marine has to be, or if you're under 5, the lighter pink version, which just has less B12. A B12, your magnesium or your Mag 365, and then suffering with the flushing, the Menoflash or Menosan or something. I personally use, I suffered, one of my major ailments was joint ache as well, because I'm a pharmacist. But I thought it was just me getting older, and I exercise and different things, and lifestyle is so important. So I find the joint support quite good, because that's got glucosamine and turmeric and everything.
And collagen as well.
Collagen, and it's kind of all in one. I really like that one.
I've seen that, but I've never used it, or I don't know anyone who's used it. So you find that good? Okay.
I do. I'm going to show you. So it's a 15 mil. It's only 15 mils, and I joke that this is shots in your 40s and 50s, but that's all it is.
Okay.
Basically. And it's got one of the strongest amounts of glucosamine. So I found that has really helped my joints as well as my joints.
All right. Okay.
Those 2 products, and obviously my magnesium and everything, for a couple of years, and I find that fantastic. You just keep it in the fridge.
Right. Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then just with vaginal lubricants, obviously. God. Yeah. So I detest the sticky strawberry flavored.
Made
for women, perimenopausal and menopausal women. this is my personal preference. We sell this in the pharmacy. We're one of the only people who sell it, and actually in Dublin. And we sell it on our website as well. That's Silk. And it's a really discreet small bottle. It can be used on your own, and it is a plant-based, water-based intimate lubricant, and it's fantastic. And it's got a little flip lid, and you just it's a little drops, and it's really easily, it's not sticky.
Okay.
And it's slightly olive oil texture, but not so much. But that's a lovely intimate lubricant.
Okay.
And smell or anything from it, it's absolutely fantastic. Use it on your own or in intimate circumstances. That one, excellent. That's lovely. That's really, really good.
And that one, just to mention for anyone watching, that is a lubricant. So you're very familiar with me that I talk a lot about Yes Organics, the vaginal moisturizer. That's different, but that is definitely just, I mean, it's a separate area, but because you have to be really careful what you're applying internally. And one thing I saw something recently on Instagram, and we have our own bacteria in the vaginal area, in the vulva and everything. And I just think be mindful of if you're using cleanses or washes. I'm not a fan of them. I'll be very honest there. I'm just not, because I think all you need is water. Because there's, and sometimes, particularly if you have a sensitivity to vaginal dryness, a lot of the ingredients in, if you're putting in a wash in internally or even around that area, can just aggravate things. And if you're feeling some inflammation in the vulva, you can really make things a lot worse. So just be mindful. Water is safe, just
completely, like, all this things like even bath bombs and stuff like that.
They can be really, if you have any bit of dryness, they actually can really aggravate, really aggravate. So just to be really careful of that. Just when we hit on that subject, like I'm forever talking about it, to the extent, Victoria, someone said to me one time on Instagram, okay, will you just stop talking about vaginal dryness? So I was like, kind of, okay, I'll stop. But it's because I know Dr. Brenda Moore and I have chatted about this, and statistically 1 in 2 women will experience vaginal atrophy. We both reckon it's every woman. We reckon that at some stage you will have, and the problem is, you see this, is that a lot of women will self-diagnose it as thrush, and it isn't actually thrush. Yeah.
And then a lot of women, look, try the over-the-counter remedies. If within a week or so it's not resolved, or it's coming back frequently, like, you need to go to your doctor and have big time. But atrophy is huge. We don't notice it, I suppose, and it's funny because Dr. Sarah Callahan, when we were having our consultation, said to me, she said this thing which I said I'm going to get on a plaque and have in my pharmacy, and it was, do you notice you have a vagina? And I was like, yes. Actually, now you're come to talk about it, I do. It's been a bit uncomfortable, and it's actually, even I was like, oh God, this is it. This is, So I'm gonna make that plaque and put it in my pharmacy. But if you notice, like, you shouldn't notice you have eyeballs unless there's something wrong with your eyeball.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah.
You do notice different changes in your vagina and that area. It's definitely a talking point to go to the doctor and let's have a look. Vaginal dryness, and then they do overtreat with thrush creams and things like that, and they just don't work because it's not thrush.
It's oh, look, it's a bugbear of mine, that one. But anyway, listen, thanks so much for sharing all that with us. That's great, and I've been meaning to do this for ages, and I know I've kind of touched on it with, I think it was Dr. Deirdre Ford. We did a bit on it a year or 2 ago, but it's always good to revisit, and particularly too because the brands are going to change more and more, I think, now, because more companies are coming in on the market. So we're going to see different products and so forth coming through. But so for anyone who lives in Coolock, you're extremely lucky. And I'll put Victoria's details and the address of the pharmacy in the notes, so you can touch base with her, and also her Instagram handles and other social media handles. But thanks so much, Victoria, and I'm sure we will chat again as we see more changes happening on the menopause front. All good changes though, right?
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.